subject of biblical foundation of marriage. And we live in an interesting world these days, do we not? We have all kinds of definitions for marriage today. And there's even some definitions that are not yet been accepted but have been kicked around, and people are thinking about, well, we ought to do something along those lines. But there's really only one biblical principle for marriage. And it's very simple, it's very clear. It is given to us by God. It is one male married to one female. Together, they share their lives, their love for each other, and their children that God blesses them with. That constitutes a family. And the responsibility of having a family and raising children and caring for them is a full-time responsibility. And parents have about 20 years with each one of their children to teach and to train and to guide and to nurture and to encourage and to discipline. Well, that's the short list, as well as all the other things. And right now we're in this particular area of our study set forth in the Scriptures of finding that one special person that God would want to unite you two together. That spouse that you desire, that spouse that you need, that spouse that you want. And we're looking at this, and we're looking at the various important things that are principles that go for a successful marriage. And among those things is the necessity for maturity. Very quickly, we humans mature physically. And we're capable to function from the size of an adult with adult functionality of our bodies at a very early age in our teen years. But that doesn't mean that we're ready yet for marriage, because there is also emotional maturity, psychological maturity, spiritual maturity, just to name a few of the things that an individual, in order for a successful marriage to work out, that we must have. And that is something that we're looking at. And principally, we're going to be asking some questions here. The following some questions you can ask yourself to measure the depth or level of your emotional maturity. How are you able to handle stress, happiness, fear, sorrow, grief, all these different things? Are you mature enough? Well, here's these questions that you can ask. How do you respond to the things that you would know? A, do I love my parents and show it? That's quite a tale that it tells, because many of the things that a young person, and the definition of young person that we're looking at this point in time is late teens into their 20-somethings, we're looking at. This is an age of maturing and growing in maturity. And how do children treat their parents? If you watch, how about this? Do I love my parents, and do I show it to them? Do you treat them, the parents, with respect, or is it disrespect? If you are unable to love those who have done so much and given so sacrificially to your care and upbringing, then how do you expect to be able to love a spouse? Yeah, if you can't love mom and dad who took care of you, provided for you, protected you, and trained you, and pointed you in right directions, and gave you counsel when you needed counsel, discipline when you needed discipline, help when you needed help, and so on. If you can't respect them, you can't love them, You can't speak well of them. Well, if that's the situation you're facing and you go out to find somebody to get married to, immediately you're going to find some problems. When you get married, if you're not emotionally mature, you're going to treat them the same way that you treated mom and dad. And think that that's okay, think that's right, think that's the way it should be. Simply because you have not matured enough. All right. An admonition to young people. When looking for a potential mate, observe the way that person treats his or her parents. Stay far, far away from the one who has the wrong attitude toward their parents. So when you're dating somebody and you're looking for a mate and you see that they mistreat mom and dad, they disrespect them, treat them like they're just nothing, or people that are out of tune and out of date and don't know anything. If you see people that you're considering as a possible subject for marriage, you better not go down that road if they're not handling this the right way. B, another question. Do I act mature? Ask yourself that question. Do I actually act like I'm a mature person? Yeah. Do you pout or throw temper tantrums when you don't get your way? Well, if you enter marriage and you haven't passed that emotional stage in your life of dealing with your feelings and emotions in a proper and right way, then you're going to treat your spouse the same way that you've been treating your mom and dad. C, do you say things you don't mean? When the flesh gets riled up and angry, do you tell family members or friends things that you don't really mean? One of the marks of the mature person is that he or she rules his or her own spirit, bridles his or her tongue. Yes, definitely. You got to learn how to control your emotions. You got to learn how to handle situations that you may not like. You must learn how to handle things in a proper fashion, to look beyond the immediate situation of what is going on deeper in the problematic situation. Do I try, D, to see my parents' side or only my own? Am I reasonable? Can I be reasoned with, or am I obstinate? Wow. Again, all these show emotional immaturity. Do I pray for my parents? Again, we're talking about from the Christian standpoint, not just looking out at the world. The world doesn't consider anything from the Christian standpoint, let alone marriage from the Christian standpoint. But biblically speaking, we're looking at biblical Christian principles of ethics, what God expects us to do and how He expects us to live. And we need to grow up in maturity in these areas. Do I pray for my parents, my family, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, grandparents, so on? The emotionally mature do. If you're doing this naturally, this is a good mark that you can look at and say, yeah, I've been doing that. That means that you're probably emotionally mature. The emotionally mature are concerned about the salvation and the welfare of family. I know teenagers in their early and in their mid-teens who are concerned about spiritual matters. their concerns. That's the important thing in their life and their thinking. And this is a very good thing. We are growing up in these areas. How well do I get along with siblings? That's brothers and sisters. Do you spend your time with them and fighting, arguing, etc.? If you do, then you can count on the same thing happening with a spouse. Obviously, as a young child, there is conflicts, there's fighting, and all kinds of arguing together, and people thinking of themselves. Children are thinking about themselves, having a selfish motive and attitude and that sort of thing. But as we mature, we need to mature out of those selfish things and so on, and think more sincerely about these things. Well, how well do you share at home? Can you exist with your siblings in peace and harmony? Someone once said, you are becoming what you are now. So, what are you now? Many teens are loud-mouthed, self-centered brats. Not all teens are that way, but there are any number that are. They won't listen to reason. You can't sit down with them and look at a problem or a situation that has come up and deal with it intelligently and rationally and logically with wisdom, because it's their way or no way. They become difficult to work with. So these are things that would occur in a marriage. And it's one reason why youthful marriages struggle to survive, because sometimes both have to grow up spiritually, emotionally, mentally, psychologically. If you are one of those few who are emotionally mature, thank the Lord for that. Then these are some things you will want for your siblings. Okay. Here's what you would want. Some of the important things you'd want of children that you would have. You would desire for them to serve God. That would be one of the major things that you would desire for your children, that they would become Christians early in life, and that they would have a desire to live and to serve God. The first thing that the Apostle Andrew did when he heard about Jesus was to run and tell his brother, Simon, that's Simon Peter. And John records this in chapter 1, verses 41 and 42. He, Andrew, first findeth his own brothers, Simon, that's Simon Peter, and saith unto him, we have found the Messiah, which is being interpreted the Christ. Both the word Messiah or Messias and Christ mean exactly the same thing, the anointed one. Messiah is from the Hebrew point of view. Christ is from the Christian's point of view, but both mean exactly the same thing, the anointed one. And he, that is, Andrew brought Peter, him to Jesus. And when Jesus beheld or looked at Peter, he said, you are Simon, the son of Jonah. Thou shalt be called Cephas, which is by interpretation a stone. Jesus said, I'm going to name you Cephas, or a stone. The idea behind that was that Peter ultimately was going to be an individual who would stand rock solid in his Christian commitment. rock solid in his Christian commitment. But you see, Peter had this brother Andrew who came to know the Lord before Peter did. And so as soon as Andrew found and saw and knew that Jesus was the Messiah, he immediately goes to tell Peter about this. And the rest, as you say, is history. The life of Peter and the things that he went through and stood for, up to and including death, for his faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. And we all need to realize that these are the ultimate important things of life. And these are things we need to prepare ourselves for, to get ready for, and to train for. Another thing to be concerned about. You would encourage them, lift them up, not think only of yourself. It is natural for us to think of ourselves first. The reason for that is we live with ourselves. Yeah, you live with yourself 24/7. But if you spend all your time focused on yourself, very quickly it becomes selfishness. And you develop the attitude that it's my way. Whether it's right, wrong, or otherwise, it's got to be my way. But in a family relationship, if you learn how to give and take, there's times that there's things that you particularly need, even want. And the family supports you in those things. And there's times that other family members need and want certain things. And you need to be supportive of them as well. It's not all about us. The real fact is God has made us very unique individuals. In a perfect world, before Adam and Eve entered into sin, and in the ultimate new universe, new earth, new Jerusalem, only saved people will ever occupy those places. Only. There'll be nobody there that isn't saved. In a perfect world, which that will be, all of us are going to desire to meet the needs of those around us. We won't be focusing on ourselves. That means that as you're looking out for everybody else around you and your family, your friends, and your brothers and sisters in the Lord, they in turn, all of them are looking out for you. In this perfect world, that fulfills every person perfectly. Well, Adam and Eve botched that one up real well. That's why today we have selfish people. That they're focused entirely upon themselves. They have needs and desires and wants and this and that and the other, and nobody's meeting those, and they quickly take this selfish attitude, since they live with themselves all the time, and it becomes very prominent in their life. Easy to do. We should not do that. We should be thinking of others and seeking others' situation, and hopefully they will be thinking of us. It's quite a perfect situation when you really think about it in the overall picture. Ultimately, it'll all be that way, but we can strive for that in these days. See, would you speak well of your siblings? There would be no name-calling and ridiculing. Brothers and sisters do rub each other the wrong way every now and again. But overall, there should be a genuine and honest support for brothers and sisters. Likewise, in marriage, if you haven't learned to support brothers and sisters in your family, you're going to be very selfish in your marriage. You're going to expect your spouse to do this, do that, do that, do that, do that for you. And you're not going to be thinking about them. You're going to be treating them like you treat your brothers and sisters. And so we need to grow above that and beyond that. Very important for us to do, or it's going to be trouble in the marriage. You would love them genuinely, not only in word, but also in actions. It's easy to say the words, I love you. And we should say those words, I love you. We should say to Mom, I love you. We should say to Dad, I love you. We should say to our brother, I love you. Our sister, I love you. We should say those things. But actions, there needs to be actions of love that we take toward them all. That's a very important thing. If we haven't learned how to do this, your marriage is heading for a crash. And that's why so many marriages do fail. Selfishness. It's my way. And they won't listen to anything else. It becomes a horrific problem. You would pray for them every day. You would want the Lord to strengthen, uphold, and bless them. You would not be telling their faults to others. In this present world, the bad news, everybody has faults. There is no exception to that. The reason why? We're conceived sinners. And even though we may strive for excellency in our life and our lifestyle, we can always find fault with somebody. Sometimes those faults are very pronounced and very dangerous. But at other times we should think in terms of not focusing on faults, but focusing on the good qualities of the individual. Nobody's perfect yet. No Christian is perfect yet. But praise God, when the work of justification, sanctification, and glorification has been completely fulfilled in each and every one of us who truly believe and have truly received Jesus, we will be like Jesus, God, in nature and character, in His image. Let us make man in our image. And that's God's goal, that's God's desire, and that's what He's going to do. And the eternal state, everybody there is going to be perfect, just like Jesus is perfect. Boy, that's going to be a wonderful time, isn't it? But right now, we have to deal with imperfections. And we need to strive to bring out the best in those around us. You strive in your own family to bring out the best in your children. Strive in your own family to bring out the best in your brothers and sisters. Bring out the best in sons and daughters. Striving for those things. And then when you get married, you strive to bring out the best in your husband, the best in your wife. These are things to work towards. These are things that we need to grow towards. And yeah, you would pray for them every day. You would want the Lord to strengthen, uphold, and bless them. You would not be telling their faults to others. You would be sensitive to their needs and not just your own. What constitutes their needs are the things in their life that they are not equipped to deal with or to meet, that they don't have the ability or the opportunity or even the mindset to meet that in their lives. And to help and to assist and to encourage them and to strengthen them in their weakest points. And if you're in the habit of doing that, when you get married, it's going to be an easy transition to be looking for the good things in your spouse, enhancing those, and then helping them in areas and encouraging them in areas that they are having trouble with and that they are straining to achieve a level of excellency in them. Okay? Continuing on. You would not take them for granted. They are your brothers and sisters, that is, family. In a few short years, if the Lord tarries, you will all be grown and separated with each living separate lives. Yeah, we grow up and we go out. We move away. Job, career, all sorts of things that result in that. It becomes a challenge of our lives. But we need to realize that these are areas that when you're together, to not make that a time where it's a time of conflict and argumenting and shouting at each other and screaming at each other, but rather a time to encourage and bless and uphold one another. And then you'll do the same in marriage with your spouse. Don't take your spouse for granted, but rather look at it this way. Of all the people in the world, God has given the husband to the wife and the wife to the husband in all the world. This is this one union. And it's wise to make the best of that. Likewise, your spouse is yours for a lifetime. You belong to each other. Respect each other. Love each other. Encourage each other. Strive to meet the needs of each other. And all these other things that we've been talking about. So important. I find through the years, on any number of occasions, I get a phone call from time to time asking me, do you perform weddings? And there was a day and time I would say, yes, I do. Today, I'm very careful of how I say that because I never know what kind of wedding they're anticipating. But usually what they want is they want somebody that's going to perform the wedding right now. I remember this one young man that called me up and he said, I would like for you to marry us if you would. Could you do that? And one of the first questions I asked was, well, how long have you known the young lady that you want to marry? They said, we met 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks. Oh, yes, it was love at first sight. Really? Well, the good news, the bad news is this. It wasn't love at first sight. What it was, and as most things, that you need to have some emotional and intellectual and spiritual maturity is to understand what love really is. Most young people, when they talk about love, are not talking about real love. They're talking about infatuation. The difference between infatuation and love is this. Infatuation is a characteristic of one or more that they see in this particular person that stands out in them, and they like that characteristic. They don't know anything else about the rest of that person. They're zeroed in on that. I'm in love. True love is a choice and a decision that you make. And it can only be made when you know the person. You need to know who you're marrying. You need to see them in different settings to know, do I really love this person? Am I willing to love this person as they are, as I see them? Or is there this, and this that I have to correct in them for them to be just right for me? It isn't going to work. It isn't going to work. Well, anyway, I told that young man, I said, no, I won't marry you at the moment. I said, you and I and your fiance, we would have to meet for a year periodically and have counseling on these things periodically over a year. And then at that point, we had discussed marriage. Oh, I don't need that. Click. That's fine. But if that individual never grew up and learned that there's more to marriage than just, hey, I met this person, it's not love. Just to jump in on it. It's infatuation. Well, our time is gone, and so we'll